So today we are coming to take a big shift since I've been focusing on Easter and many people around Easter. So today we'll break the stereotype. We just leave out of the box of the resurrection and we go and find another topic today. And found today the story about Peter, and everybody knows about Peter is the only disciple that walks on the water. But we forgot that the guy walked on the water was Christ first, and then the story goes on, and it's a very famous one. And we miss a lot of good lessons from the Bible when we focus on the big supernatural things that happen, like miracles. While we miss many miracles that happen on many levels. So if I want to take you into a journey to see this miracle in a bigger and a deeper way, I want to put some basic information with you, just to make you aware of where the story is coming from. So first, there are two stories about Christ calming the wind. Do not feel like you're mixing things up, or your memory is not working good. No, there's actually two stories in Matthew about Christ dealing with the wind and ship, and almost like similar situation. The first story happened in Matthew 8, when he talks about Christ sleeping in the boat. That's a different story. Very similar, but a different story. He will calm the sea. Well, we hear about miracles, but the story ended there. The story today is about Christ not being on the boat. The story we know is about the disciples being forced to go to the other side of the lake. You have to be on the ship, and when they are wondering, you're not coming with us, Christ said, I have my own way. You go, and I'll come and follow you. And I'll get to you in my way. So they were forced to be on the boat. They went on the boat, and we know the whole story that's happened. So Christ was not in the sea at all. We know that they've been really through a very hard time, big storm all night. And we know the story that Christ came at the last part of the night, almost close to the time of dawn, and then he interfered with calming, and we know the rest of the story. So I want this to make it very clear. Yes, there are two stories in Matthew about wind and boat and disciples and little faith, so there is a lot of similarities. So feel good about your memory. You're not mixing things up. They are actually in the Bible in the same writer. So the second thing that I want to, before we go dig into the story, besides that story is repeated in different ways, this is another thing that we need to know about the writer of the Gospel of Matthew. This writer is writing for the Jew. His big concern is about how the Jew can accept Christ as one of us. The big accusation about Christ is not knowing who his father. We did not know a lot of things about him. And now he's being famous as a big preacher, as a healer, as a celebrity. He's acting like, so the way to attack this guy, you have no roots. You do not belong to us. You have no place here. So the way they attack Christ as being somebody who's famous and powerful in the community, that's what happened. So Matthew is really trying to fight all the time to say, as a Jew, Christ is good as any Jew, but he is greater. So the point that anytime you read the Gospel of Matthew, when he tries to go back to bring and highlight anybody from the Jewish tradition, that he knows that it's well worshipped by them, he will say, Christ is not just like them. He is greater than them. So if you think of Abraham, who's greater than Abraham for us as a Jew? He would say, he has similar things like Abraham, but he's even better. He's greater. From the same perspective that you see that makes you see the story from a different way, that why Christ did what he did when he allowed Peter, when he listened to Peter, when Peter really accused, are you the one? And if you are, let me come and walk on the water. Just we want to show that when the Jews are listening to the story, the echo in their ears is the story about coming out of Egypt. The story sounds similar. Yes, it's a lake. In the past was the Red Sea, and the Jews are coming out of the Exodus. But who is the great guy that's divided the sea and made this big miracle? Is Moses. So, but he's trying to say Moses was the one that you see, but God is behind the scene. And as we see today that Peter is the one taking the shot. He's the one walking the water. I didn't think that anybody else did that. So we've been talking about Peter for a long time, and maybe we highlighted negative things about him. But today we're actually highlighting this. I didn't think any disciple can claim that they've been walking on the water. They've been acting like a miracle performer. They were acting like a little God. When you look at this experience, you will not find any other disciples experience that. So as many, we have talked a few times about Peter being accused of being the one who talks quicker and gets himself in troubles. He's the one that's make a lot of promises and he never stays with his promises. He's the one that he denied his master, all of these negative things. And we talked about that in Gospel of John, the last chapter, when Christ was telling him, "Do you love me? Do you love me?" We're saying the writer was trying to give credit to Peter, say, "You deserve to be the leader of the church." We know that after many years, the seat of the leader of Christianity was vacuum. And we needed somebody where people agreed on him. And we know that's very hard to everybody to agree on one person. So there are people who want to support him, so they will bring positive things to say, this guy deserves to be the leader, and here is the proof, 1, 2, 3. So I've been highlighting the negative things, that Peter does not deserve to replace Christ. There's a big difference here, if you heard me right. Replace Christ or represent. They look the same. If I am here to represent somebody or to replace somebody, my appearance will look the same. My act will look the same. But the profound things inside what I am doing here is my goal to replace Christ, to push Christ off the scene. You are done. You did a good job. Now it's my turn now. Or there's a difference. No, I could not be here without what you did and what you are doing. I could not be here. I could not be walking on the water without you doing what you did. I could not do anything. So what happened is people will look at Peter in this moment and say, wow, he's the lucky disciple. He got himself many times in trouble, but this time he won something good. He's walking on the water. He challenged Christ, and Christ responded to him, and he took care of him. So this was another thing that many biblical scholars say also those in the Jewish tradition. We know the church after Christ was one in the outside of Jerusalem, which we call the Gentiles, which anybody who came to be Christian, but not from a Jewish tradition. So anybody outside of Judaism. So we have a church outside that's well supported by Paul. And we have a church in Jerusalem that's supported by Peter. So the Jewish people are actually celebrating Peter as their guy. He's the one that we will fight for. If you want to be Christian, you have to be circumcised. If you want to be Christian, you have to do this and this. So he kept many of the Jewish tradition into this new religion. As a Jew, I listen to Peter and say, he's my guy. When I listen to Paul, he's the guy who's corrupted by the Romans and the Greeks. I didn't like this guy. He's so open. He's like, everybody come and love and be together and all of these things. But Peter is good. He tells us, this is how you be a good Christian. So the instruction that Peter provided made a Jew who lived in Jerusalem more secure. As a Jew who became Christian in Jerusalem, I'm not making much difference. It's kind of like we made a little bit step, but there is still a lot of tradition. The way we fast, the way we give money, the way we deal with things, we kept a lot of the Jewish tradition. While Paul is bringing a different tradition to that. He brings in a whole say, the gate is open and everybody's new. You are the new creation in Jesus Christ. So some writers said this part actually was written, the story about Peter walking to calm those who maybe celebrated Peter too much. That was very new for me because I've been coming so hard on Peter for many weeks and highlighting all the negative things. But I never thought about also there is a part of Peter that could be so celebrated to the part where we forgot who's behind the scene. So the whole story that's giving a lot of credit of what Peter did, walking on the water and challenging Christ the way he did, is to remind us why Peter did not continue to walk on the water. Because we forgot that who was giving the promise. I imagine, I have no evidence of that, of Christ teaching him and say, keep looking at my eyes, do not be afraid, do not worry about anything else. I have no proof about that. I'm just imagining of the scene. But how can you not listen to the wind around you? How you cannot listen to this chaos that's around you? There is nothing in order, even if you keep listening to your master and try to keep focus on your master. But the whole writer is trying to say, Peter is great. Peter is one of us. But he is nothing without the guy who called him out to walk on the water. He is nothing. He could be drowned in any minute if he stopped to focus on where is my power is coming from. He will be nothing in his all this powerful thing that you see him as a good preacher, as a healer, as a big figure, as a leader. He is zero without God being next to him. So that's why what happened, that's when leaders sometimes the problem is not about being a failure, but sometimes being successful. Success could be your enemies more than being a failure. You start to feel good about yourself. You start to feel like, look how many people are coming to listen to me. People are really looking in the eyes, their bright eyes, the way they look at me. They put me in a different, and then you go into your ivory tower to be isolated. So the other thing that I would like to highlight with you today that's really touched me as I was reading this text like you and try to ask myself, what can I take out of this text? There are a lot of good things. The story started actually in chapter 14, and I give you as a homework, when you go home, read the whole chapter. Today we only focus on the verse 2 to 33, talking about 11 verses. But really, there's tons of things happen in this chapter. Chapter 14 starts with the story about Herod who wants to get his brother's wife, and we know there is a bad guy in the community, tells him, this is not good, you could not do that, this is not right, God will blame you, and all of these things. And the guy named John the Baptist. So and then the story goes on, and the daughter of this woman was dancing to Herod, and Herod liked the way she was dancing, and he told her, anything you ask, I'll give to you. And she asked for the head of John the Baptist. He could not take his words back. He was saying that in front of the crowds. A man is knowing by his words. So then he has to listen. And this happened, and people were devastated. And the story goes on, and then suddenly we know that Christ became aware that his cousin, maybe his competitor, but this wonderful prophet, his life was taken away. So then Christ heard about that. And the next thing we hear about that Christ went to be alone. It's just like one word, how many times you can read it and miss it. But it's very powerful. This is physically, we're talking about connection biologically between John the Baptist and Christ. So there is a family connection. So it's a loss of somebody in your family. It's a loss of friend. It's a loss of mentor who baptized you and talked to you. So, and I don't know why the Bible will just walk it and talk about it like nothing happened. And where I can dig and see it is Christ is grieving. He was hit by this bad news about the loss of his best friend. the guy who prepared the way for him. And the Bible will say very quickly that Christ went into a quiet place. Was he grieving? Did he needed this moment for himself to maybe cry, to talk to God and blame God, or say how an innocent, beautiful person, the person that speaks for what is right and what is just, he paid his life. He's gone. Christ as human, maybe he was grieving. And what happened? He needed time for himself. And this is the key between everything happened before and everything happened after. And then people heard about Christ somehow is living like a monk somewhere in his little thing. So people followed him. And they want the healing. They want things. And the story goes on with the feeding of the multitudes, the crowds, the thousands of people, and about the miracles of the loaves and fish. And then we know about the story, what's happened. And then the disciples said, now just let them go. And Christ said, no, you go on the boat, and I'll take care of them. And here it comes again in the same text, that Christ, after he pushed, in other translation, he insisted that the disciples will go on their own on the ship. And then we hear again, Christ went to a quiet place by himself. He fed the crowds. People were very happy. This guy can feed us, can make us happy. He can give us good food. We even have a leftover that we can feed another whole village. So he could feel very good about himself as a person too. People are celebrating him. But he did not stop. He sent his disciples to be on their own into unexpected storm. At the same time, he went again to be by himself. Maybe to remind himself not to be fooled when you are celebrated by people. And not to be down when you are not celebrated by people. Not to depend on when people are cheering for you or when people are really saying bad things at you. That's the nature of humanity. We could not support the same person forever. If we disagree, our attitude gets different. So Christ is saying, where do you get your move from? If your motivation of the source of your moves in life is coming from people, you are in a poor situation. So Christ, it is good if you hear people are supporting you, take it, but do not make it the source of your move. The source of your move is faith. And faith is the only thing to know that I am nothing without God. I can do everything, but I know God can. I cannot be everywhere, but I know God can. I know that I cannot say all the time the right things at the right time to the right people. So should I just not say anything? Or should I speak trusting that God can use even my weakness, my misunderstanding, my lack of knowing many things around me? I cannot read what's in your mind right now. I could not control what I'm saying will come into your mind and to your heart. This is not my business. So fear makes you paralyzed. Fear makes you give up on hope. Fear makes you do not think, do not act, do not anything, and makes you live like a dead person. But faith say, keep trying. It's okay. Even with your little faith, there is still things can happen. Take courage. It is I. Do not be afraid. So as we see in the story today, as we hear that, Christ is inviting us. But I say, what can protect Christ and Peter and everybody is, do you take time for yourself to have self-talk? Do you have to take time for yourself when you can speak your feeling, if you are grieving or if you are celebrating something. The sense of freedom of speaking with God honestly and openly. Christ himself was showing us the way that of self-care, not self-centered. Self-care when you listen to yourself and express your feelings openly and honestly. So we see this is wonderful. There are many wonderful lessons in the story. But one of them is the great thing is to know that if my moves comes on my health changes. I could not trust my health. If my moves trust coming on being sharp and knowing how to use logic and things and math, I do not trust how my memories and my brain works all the time. If my moves in life comes based on that I am supported by financial support and other good financial plans, I do not trust that. Things can come, all the whole money in the world can come to you in 1 second and can be gone in 1 second. So how and where can I get a place where always I can move, where there is no move? Where there is things that I can count on when everything else in life betrays me. What is that? And I will give you homework. Go home and make a list of things that you can lean on and say, yes, these things will stay with me forever. Then I better replace it. God is the answer. Where everything around us is failing, logic, science, everything that we made, everything that we brought up for, everything that we know that this is the best way. When all these things failing, what else left? So that's why when I just highlighted this as we all have to move, if we like or not. But where is the power that makes you move? All the other powers in life is temporary and cannot be there all the time. But the power of faith is the only one that's be there when logic cannot work, when science cannot work, when nothing else can, when even my own self that I doubt that I can even make it. And God is saying to you, yes, you are with little faith, so I can shine through you. You are the one with keeping trying, that I can be here with you. Take courage. Calm them down. It is I. It is me. And now he says, do not be afraid. I give you the reasons. And as the wonderful thing, that's how the story ended, is the whole chaotic scene that you see around you, winds and a ship that's coming up and down, almost going to be broken. And you hear that the wind comes only when Christ and Peter went inside the ship. It's just very interesting metaphor about people like this guy he's singing. The whole chaos is because of the wind. Anybody will say, just stop the wind first and everybody's going to be happy. And then teach your disciples whatever you want to teach them. Go deeply and reflect on what is meaning. But save us first. Take care of the storm first. But maybe this was part of the lesson to say that God wants us to go through the storm and to feel supported and warmed by each other. So as we see Christ on one side, Peter on one side, the disciples are screaming and watching this wonderful scene and debate between the master and the disciple, but all of them are divided, even if they are very close to each other. But we see the storm calms down when Christ holds the hand of this little Peter, encourage him and save him from being drowned, and take him inside the boat, the old disciples and the master in one thing. And one of the biblical interpretations said that many people in early church that saw the ship as the church, as a symbol of the church. That we get together. As we get together, we feel that we can be saved from many storms. As we are together, we support each other. But the point is, the ship is not a place to stay in forever. The ship is a place to take you from one place to another. It's the place that you go and charge yourself, but not to feel lazy and say, I want to stay in the church 24 hours. I want to live in the church. I don't want to go outside. The community is sinner and the society is bad. I want to stay here. But one of the translations that's saying that the church is like the ship that we needed to save us as far as we are together. But we are not meant to stay in the ship. When you come on Sunday here, not for you to be isolated from the world, but you come here to breathe fresh air, to be honest with yourself even for a few minutes, to have a self-talk and be able to listen to God's voice even for these few minutes. When we come here, we're not escaping the world. We are coming to the Lord to equip us, to fill us, so when we go out, people can see us and feel us and know you are truly a children of God. Amen.
If anyone